I'd like to call to order this March 7th, 2024 joint budget workshop meeting between the Powhatan County Board of Supervisors and the Powhatan County School Board. I'd like to ask Ms. Morissette, will you do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Donati can do the invocation, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this incredible time. We ask that you would just be with us here and help us use the tools that you've given us through our leadership. Help us remain humble and do your will. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 I'll call our Powhatan County School Board joint workshop with the Board of Supervisors to order, and we're all together here today. Are there any requests to postpone agenda items, additions, deletions, or changes in the order of presentation? Seeing none.
Can I get a formal approval of the agenda, please?
I'd like to make a motion to formally approve this agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brings us to school superintendent updates.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. This has been a great opportunity through the last couple of years. It's not even been 2 years that I've been sitting in this position. But the collaboration and partnership between the Board of Supervisors and the school board is something I think our county needs to be proud of. And, you know, I really appreciate that our team, as far as myself and the county administrator, work closely together, as well as our staff. I think it makes us stronger as a community. And, you know, bringing forward a budget today that we hope is responsive, that we know is responsive to our needs, but hopefully we can show that to you through the process today. And we look forward to continuing the partnership as we continue to go through the process.
Megan? County administrator updates.
Yeah, I'll just echo superintendent's comments that collaboration is certainly the best I've ever seen. We don't just collaborate and meet and work together because we have to, but I think we also enjoy it genuinely. The work we do together, and budget's always tough. To new elected boards coming in, and immediately you don't get any kind of break. You got to immediately start working on the budget. So county's historically recently been in great financial shape. Will continue to be. We'll have to figure out some stuff in the budget that we do every year. But again, partnership is great. Looking forward to working with people. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Brett. Brings us to our first public comment period. 3 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes per group. We have no one signed up. We will close the public comment period and we'll move on to new business. Part A, FY25 county budget discussion.
Yeah, so pleased to present tonight and go through with you all our draft FY25 recommended budget. So some things we'll touch on tonight, budget guidelines and policies, summary of the budget, breakdown of where the money goes, show our proposed revenues as well as proposed expenditures, go into the positions a little bit, FY25 CIP, show some of the funding history, look at our 10-year financial forecast model, other projections on that, and summarize the budget calendar. So we'll present kind of at a high level tonight. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions at any point, but next week we have a workshop to specifically go department by department, get into those greater details on every individual department. And at that time, we'll also have all of our leadership team, department heads, and staff here as well to answer questions for you. So some of our high-level budget guidelines going into this budget, using our 10-year financial forecast model to understand the implications of this year's budget, what that means long-term. Fund any increases with new recurring revenue and not using one-time money for ongoing expenses. Balance the budget. We have to do that by law. Always make sure we do. Not shown on here, but in speaking with you all, seemed to be a clear understanding that you want to maintain current tax rate. So that is also shown in this budget as well. And then going out to our departments, sometimes when we ask our departments to put together their budget, we give them some more guidelines as far as we want to keep increases within a certain percent, things like that. Being that this is my first true budget as county administrator, last year was doing it as interim, and some of the work had started under prior county administrator. This time didn't give the departments any constraints that I'm here just completely, no limits what you think you need and want. So cast the line. So we have a full understanding. As ever, can't fund it all, but at least we know what departments think they need or may want in the future. Some of our policies that are maintained in this budget, maintaining a general fund balance of 15% of revenues. We have a couple policies for our debt ratios, so making sure that debt as a percent of our assessed value does not exceed 4%, does not, and making sure as a percent of our total expenditures, it does not exceed 15% of the maximum, with the ideal goal of keeping it under 12. That is reflected in this budget. All fund lines are balanced, and then preserve our excellent AA+ bond rating, which again, locality of our size is essentially the highest rating one can have. And then fully fund all of our debt leases and contracts. So a high level summary, again, not putting really constraints on it. Departments in total came back with requests of $41.6 million for this budget. Looking at our revenues and what we think we can afford, whittled that down to 39.8 million, so reduced about 1.8 million in operating expenditures. A lot of those, as always, are new positions or personnel increase requests. And I'd say nothing in that. It's not a good idea. I think every single thing is something that if we could, we'd love to do. And some of them, you have to ask once, 2, 3 times, and eventually we do. But again, departments came up with really good proposals, but we have to match that with our revenues and what we feel we can afford. Then in CIP capital requests, total request of nearly 35.5 million. We're proposing about 17.5 million, so more than cut that in half for FY25. Again, all good projects, all things we'd like to do one day, but some of those, as usual, get pushed out years. So on the county general fund operating, that would be a budget of 39.8 million. That's an increase of 1.8 million over FY24, or about just under a 5% increase. School side for the county's proposed budget, that would be 59.8 million total, including both the local and state revenues. That would be an increase of 2.5 million, or about 4.5% increase over last year. Some high level, again, this budget would maintain 69-cent tax rate, which is at least a 30-year low for us. Would provide an additional $500,000 in local transfer to schools over last year. Would propose a 4% countywide pay increase that we would propose for both us and schools. And this is one that we try and maintain our competitiveness within the region. So we're always looking at both what the state's doing, what neighbors and peer localities and those that we compete with are doing. We did a good job last year of updating our common class and getting us on market and where we need to be. So we just want to make sure that we don't get where we were last year, where we slowly lose ground to the region. So talking with other county administrators right now, seems like most are in the 4 to 5% pay increase this year, although some for certain selected positions are looking as high as 10 or 15%. Again, Powhatan, we aren't looking to necessarily lead the region in pay. We don't want to be so far back that it's attractive to lead. If you're working here, it's also not just the pay, it's the lifestyle and what Powhatan is and all that, which means a lot. But again, to a certain point, people have bills to pay, and kids to put in school, and if we lose too much ground with the region, then we become uncompetitive, and there's a cost of that. So we're proposing to build in 4% increase. Total headcount increase of 4.7 full-time equivalents. We'll go into another slide exactly how those are broken down. And then our social services department, as I mentioned, we did a common class update last year for general county government. Social services, while they're under administration, they occupy kind of an interesting quasi-local, quasi-state space where they're on a state pay plan. But that state pay plan is one size fits all. It's meant to work from anybody like Virginia Beach with 1 million people all the way down to the smallest town in Southwest Virginia. So it's not one size fits all. So we're looking at doing more of a common class update that's the right size and right fit for Powhatan to make sure our Department of Social Service employees also are on market. So we're doing that. And then various CIP projects, which again, a couple slides we'll go into.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. King.
on the proposed and amount reduced of the CIP, can we get a breakdown of what you're cutting out of that $35 million?
And we'll, I'll go through and show you what we are proposing and then we can summarize what was. And then how the money is spent. So here you see, not unusual. This is going to be a fairly typical graph for all jurisdictions, most localities that schools is large percent plus or minus. Then schools debt about 5%, county project debt about 3%, and capital projects 3.7%. So that would be kind of pay as you go, cash funding. All other departments 10%, public safety a little over 12%. Health and welfare, almost 7%, and then general government and administration, nearly 5%.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Powell.
Ms. Sardine, the 51.9, that includes transfer in state, federal,
That is everything.
that's everything. What's the actual out-of-pocket?
The total, I believe that's shown on a future slide, but what is the total amount?
29?
Not 29 even, but 29 million, I don't get one, which is.
And during the time of campaigning, a lot of folks talked about, the amount of money that goes from county to school. And a lot of the public doesn't understand that what the schools ask for from us is 29 million. And so the number is much larger when you factor state and federal money. Just want to make that clear.
So looking at how revenues are increasing in this year, real estate, 511,000, personal property, 839,000. Then a number of other smaller increases in those lines, and use of fund balance, 1.7 million, but that still keeps us well above our fund balance policies for maintaining fund balance. And similarly, expenditure breakdowns, position requests, again, I'll get into the specifics on those here in a moment, but nearly 450,000, raised certification pay and insurance. Fortunately, this year, our insurance rates were flat after some increases over years, so that's good. So most of this is going to be that 4%. Various departmental operating increases of 725,000. Debt service, this is school bus leases, 178,000. Again, that local transfer increase of $500,000, and then CIP, other transfers, 1.2.
Mr. Powell.
Sardine, possibly, we get into departmental details. Just looking at maintenance and service contracts, you notice a number of points there where the numbers in 24, for instance, in county administrator's office was 2780. And FY 24 and 25, it's $26,028. So there's some big jumps in maintenance and service contracts. Not for today, but I want to just put on the agenda that some of those increases we really, I need to better understand. In the case of information technology, library, parks and rec, they all went down significantly. So I like what they're doing. So whatever the magic is. And then also in the operating dollars, there were a few departments that went well above the overall average. So at a future meeting, I just want to make sure that we can cover some of the rationale.
Absolutely. So, yeah, next week's workshop, department by department, we'll be happy to look at each of those maintenance service contracts and what went up and down. So, yep. So a little more information on the proposed positions. One is a transportation manager. A couple of things we would see this position doing. One, we're trying to generate more revenue from good quality economic development. VDOT is a great partner. They help with us, but if they're busy, they cover a lot of jurisdictions. So a lot of time on project is spent working out transportation issues that bouncing back and forth to the county. The developers, engineers, VDOT can drag a project out months or even a year or more. So we see this person working on working on development projects and trying to find solutions to make sure they're well planned for transportation and hopefully speed up some of that development and make us more business friendly. Then also, there's literally billions of dollars in transportation funding out there. Mr. Schwendeman, when he speaks, is always very good about bringing that stuff to our attention. But some of those applications, literally can take weeks to put together, and without staff dedicated to that, we just don't have the time. So, sometimes we'll kind of throw an application in just to, minimally put together just to get it in, but we're definitely not putting together the full effort to get that money. So obviously this person going after all of that funding, both regional dollars, state dollars, other dollars to do a lot more transportation projects here in the county. This one would not be drawing from the general fund. We get a couple million to 2.5 million a year from the Central Virginia Transportation Authority that we can only spend on transportation projects. Transportation staff isn't allowable use of that, so we're proposing to use some of our CBTA money towards that. And hopefully, if we get 1 or 2 grants, the position will pay for itself for many, many years.
Mr. Chairman,
Powers.
Mr. Charlie, do you anticipate CTBA to be funding mechanism 26 on for that position or moving it into the general fund?
It's, we could do it either way. I know Goochland, they added this position, they originally started it when they did using CBTA funds, and then they decided to transition it into general funds. We could do it either way. But with, roughly 2.5 million or so a year in CBTA, there's plenty to pay for it. And if we're drawing in more funds from grants and things to do project, I don't think you'll really see this position depleting what we have to do on projects. But we could, at the end of the day, it's county money, whether it's general fund or CBTA, so we could look at that in the future. But for now, I would say that I would presume continue CBTA funding.
Can I add to that? I'm on the CBTA Finance Committee this time, and they are willing to work with us in projects like that to expend it out. What we have to do. Okay. They're willing to help us in where we can.
Just dipping into it as opposed to using it for higher percentage max for smart scale and other things that, studies that we done, either won't do, can't do, or take too long to do, that we can fund to get it done.
And I think a recent example of this, both, good and maybe a missed opportunity is CBTA. We just got awarded $5 million to start improvements at the Route 1360 Academy intersection. I think the chairman who serves on that and advocated for it, and Supervisor Kenny very early on identified that as well as a priority project in his district. So we're very thankful for that $5 million. But again, had we had such a position like this and been working on that project more seriously for years, I think we probably could have gotten even more. But it's an excellent start.
Mr. Jim, that 5 million is above, outside of CTDA.
Correct.
So we didn't have to match anything to get that 5 million.
No. Great. Then increasing the part-time firefighter pool. So this isn't actually increasing headcount, but it's just more funding available for our part-time staff to draw from and increase the hours that they're out serving the county. Utilities operator 3. So this was one that originally was proposed. We took out, but then as we were developing the budget, DEQ and EPA pushed us into a higher tier of reporting for our wastewater plants. Significantly more testing requirements. And if we don't meet those, then there's significant fines that we're levying. So, this one we can either pay DEQ and EPA through fines, or we can hire somebody to do it right and save money that way. So we put that one back in with, again, DEQ and EPA kind of forcing our hand on the issue.
Mr. Chairman, one more
Yes,
time.
Mr. Powers.
Firefighter, what was the request?
The total request.
$94,000.
Yeah, but how many positions,
How many-
They requested 3 full-time firefighters on top of the firefighter pool.
3 full-time. And you could afford it? I mean, what's,
Yeah, that, again, nothing in the budget that anybody requested that I don't think is a great idea and love to fund, but looking at what we minimally feel we can with the revenues. And again, we get into the end, looking at the long-term financial forecast model, really trying to take a fairly tight approach to this year's budget and what we feel we can and can't afford. But yeah, that's what the budget process is for, to see what you all in the public and others want to do.
okay.
2 part-time positions for the sheriff's office, and then a maintenance worker 1 that would be in Parks and Rec. This was something in this budget we saw requests from both Parks and Rec and facilities. We chose to put this one in Parks and Rec, which would free up some of the time from the facility staff who are doing work for Parks and Rec. So although it showed Parks and Rec, it would also increase in capacity on the general county facility side. And then lastly, part-time farm market manager. So the group that runs the Powhatan Farmers Market in the village here, they've signaled that they no longer intend to do it. They would like to transition that on to us, something that the community seems to value and enjoy, and we would see it go. So we talked to Parks and Rec about taking that on. We believe we can cover most, if not all of it, with the fees from running the market. And because this market also has one in Goochland, we're also talking Goochland, could there be a possibility to have a full-time position that we share between both localities to hopefully save some money and efficiency. And then we're combining some positions, reducing headcount in finance. So the total impact is roughly 4.7 full-time equivalents.
Next question, that is Palmer's Market here.
That would be fine, yeah. I mean, certainly if we do take, Parks and Rec would be open to whatever is the best opportunity, but for the foreseeable future, we'd be at kind of the plans to change the move it, but if there's a better place, we'd certainly be open to it. I've been talking about the FY25 proposed CIP projects. Fire, that would be 2 admin vehicles, a brush truck, an ambulance, and a hazmat trailer. For IT, various equipment, network software refresh, data storage, cybersecurity upgrades, AV upgrades for some of our meeting spaces. And then as you recall, we put some money aside in case we do get the additional grant from Firefly to expand broadband in the eastern end of the county. I hope we'll find out about that next month, but putting that funding aside in case we do need to match that grant.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Kid.
so is there another company that we could use besides Firefly? I mean, is there anybody else that we could solicit to bid on that?
They certainly aren't the only person who does broadband, so there are others. For that one, for this particular one, the grants had to have already been submitted. So if we wanted to go after this grant funding, it would be too late to have a different partner. But I mean, just if we don't get this one or looking at our opportunities, yeah, there are others. They're out there. I wish there were more, and I wish more were interested, but we could proactively go out. So hosted backbone would be one that we've worked with in a smaller capacity to fill in some gaps and do some projects. But yeah. And Parks and Rec, 2.5 million is to get started on the community center. So we're wrapping up feasibility study on that. That actually closes tomorrow, the survey. So if you haven't, you're interested, go on our website under Parks and Rec, and you can still get your input put into that survey. But once that survey closes, we work with you all on the results of the feasibility study. Assuming you all wish to pursue something, this would be 2.5 million next year's budget to start on some of the design work, engineering, et cetera, on that. And then some general facility repairs and upgrades. For E911 dispatch, the recorder for that department is coming up on its end of life, so we need to replace that. Public Works, some HVAC improvements, roof for this building. So we did the HVAC here last year, but we still need to follow back up on the roof. Commonwealth Attorney's Office, they're doing some upgrades that it's essentially the same since the 1970s. They're well past due for some upgrades and improvements in that office. And then some signage around the village area. Public utilities, we need to make some upgrades to our wastewater treatment plants. Again, getting to those testing requirements, not wanting to exceed limits that have fines. Pump station, we're starting to get some issues with high pressures in our pump line, especially in kind of the Route 60 East area. We have a forced pressure sewer main up and down 60, and over the years, we've allowed a number of businesses and others to connect to it with individual smaller private pump stations. But the problem is, as we get more and more use on that, it raises the mainline pressure, and some of those small systems have a hard time overcoming the pressure, getting their waste into the system. So really the solution is to have a couple larger public pump stations that they can feed into and feed into our main. Providing some remote read meters and asset management software. Facilities, just general facility updates and improvements. Administration vehicles, we have a planning department vehicle that's due for replacement, and then Parks and Rec needs to add a vehicle. And then the sheriff's office adding 7 vehicles, which was there their request.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Chardon, the public works to go from 2.3 million to 400,000 is things that you outlined that need to be done. I'm assuming that 388 says we're not going to do it.
Yes, so there were, again, more requests. We're not doing them in this year. So I don't think there was not much that we removed from the CIP entirely. There may have been a project or two, but for the most part, it was pushing on that FY 26, 27, 28, et cetera. So if you, your budget book, and we'll also have a dedicated workshop just on CIP, dig into all that.
Okay.
But again, most of the projects still are on the CIP, just not necessarily funded in FY 25 as proposed.
And one other question, Mr. Chairman. The schools, not for today, but when we do meet on this, I'd like to get a breakdown. I think Mr. Kenny asked for it, to get a breakdown of what's included in that 12 million.
Yeah, and sorry, I skipped over there. It's because that'll be a part of the
Okay.
presentation as well.
We want to steal thunder. Thank you.
So this is just, again, a high-level summary of some of the increases and changes and some of the historical data over prior years. And then, as I mentioned, we have our 10-year financial forecast model that we use. So, you know, that 10-year outlook, that graph a little scary. It's not as scary as it looks. So this puts in every single thing possible in the CIP and assumes we'll do all of it with no changes. So we have some built-in minor increases over the years, but this assumes there'd be no change in revenues, whether that be new economic development projects bringing in revenue, whether that be changes to the tax rate. It assumes that there would be no reductions, just that we would put in every single CIP project, the must-haves, the nice-to-haves, the want-to-haves, and that we would do it all. So essentially what it tells us is if we don't change anything over the next 10 years, all of the projects are not affordable in this time frame. But the reality is we wouldn't do that. We would adjust as we go. This isn't something where we'll change it in this budget year, but we need to keep an eye on this as we all work together over the next 4 years, make sure we're year by year kind of writing that curve, finding ways, grants, other things, bringing in more revenue if we do want to do these CIP projects. Again, it's just a model. So here we show, I think we do a good job with it, but there's a lot of assumptions built in. And if 10 different people made 10 different models, each one would be a little different, better or worse. So kind of like the cone of uncertainty you see past storms, we're showing these are projections, and as things go, they can be down or up as well. So we're pretty good about forecasting a year or two ahead, but as you get much further out than that, there's a lot of uncertainty and guesswork, and a lot of things between now and then will change for better or for worse. But again, we need to work together to make sure that we maintain our financial policies and our good financial standing, and find a way to correct that curve. So.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Charlie, just refresh, what's the percentage, the assumptions you make in terms of percentage of change in assessed value and inflation?
Yeah, so there are many assumptions built into this model. We work with right there, our Commissioner of Revenue, kind of on what he's seeing out there. Work with other economists and data, or development office, permit center office to try and make some of the best assumptions. Any of the high level
Yes,
figures
sir.
that you would point out?
So there are a few baseline assumptions, and again, in collaboration with the entire county. So we assume a long-term salary wage increase of 3% year over year, benefits 6%, and that's primarily health insurance increases. So if there isn't a health insurance increase for a certain year that we're sure of, I adjusted that for that 1 year, but long-term 6%. Long-term operating growth, our operating budget, office supplies, that kind of thing, 3%. And then to answer the question for our real estate assessments, it's a little more complicated than that because we assume new construction each year kind of differently. But long-term for assessments in the out years, we're looking at a 3.25% increase on existing assessments for as a blend of residential and commercial.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Denard.
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming there's going to be meetings on giving us some options, different avenues to take moving forward so that we're not, too far
Absolutely.
behind.
Yeah, and the good thing about the model is it's not static. We can put in all kinds of different assumptions. So if we want to see, again, we make certain relatively conservative estimates, but if you want to see if commercial development increased a certain percent or amount, what that looks like, tax rate, if you all wanted to see what it would take to fund certain projects as far as the tax rate goes, we could model that. If you wanted to put in and take out certain projects, we can run all kinds of assumptions and models for the future as well. In summary, the model shows that we're good, for the next several years, but we don't want to not make changes and adjustments and kick the can down the road, too far. But again, we're in good financial shape, we continue to be, but long term, we've got some big capital projects on the horizon to figure out.
That question, Charlotte, our tax supported debt service. So we below 12%. Correct.
What's the current ratio?
So for our debt service to expenditures, we're projecting for FY 25 to be a hair over 10%.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and if you look in that 10-year financial forecast model, it also shows and projects out our debt ratios. All of those are well maintained and below our policies. So those were all good, even if we borrowed for all these projects. It's really our fund balance policy that we fall under. And then just looking at the budget calendars, we're here kind of in the top third of this right now, the workshop tonight. Next week, we will have a workshop in here with all of our departments on hand to go through department by department. We'll also do personnel at that time. March 18th, then we'll be focusing on the CIP. March 25th, at your regular meeting, we'll have a public hearing on the real estate tax rate and hopefully adopt the real estate and personal property tax rates, which we're currently proposing to be unchanged. March 28th, we'll discuss the CIP, the budget and CIP, and see if y'all are ready to put it out for advertisement and what that budget is that we're advertising. We can always reduce it, we just can increase it from that point. Then April 10th, assuming we move on schedule, that would be the first legal notice running Powhatan today of our intended budget. April 22nd, we hold public hearings on the budget fee schedule. And then there's a requirement that then you wait 7 days before you actually adopt. So then anytime April 29th regular meeting or after, you would be able to adopt the FY25 budget CIP fee schedule.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Brett, on the March 18th, discuss CIP personnel, does that CIP include for the school as well?
Yeah, so we can certainly add that, discuss that, and we can see if Beth or others would be available. Dig into that more as well. Yeah, and the personnel will be, we had originally planned that on there, but we'll just bundle that with the 14th. We have all our departments. That is a summary of our draft FY25 budget. Again, we've got a number more workshops to dig into the details coming up, but happy to answer any questions now or after the school's presentation.
Mr. Chair, are we allowed to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, Saturday. Okay, I'm match things up penny for penny. You know how I'm like that. So I'm just a little bit confused. In the 23-24 budget, in your presentation, you said that we got 57 million, 0.3. I'll just do that easy. My budget book from the school board, the 23-24 adopted budget, we got 58.1 million. So I just was,
I can answer that.
okay, good.
So, you got, when we were going through the budget, there's $800,000 of ESSER funds that
Yes.
she was presenting in your budget. I show that in another called a school grants fund,
That's
which is not
fine.
part of that operating budget.
Okay, I just try to match dollars
No,
up for
you're good.
dollars. It's, okay, then, all right, that, and then is that also part of the 24-25 to, but there's no ESSER in 24-25, right?
No, ma'am.
Because on
Not
that,
I'm aware of.
I show, you guys are showing 59.8, and in our budget, we show 63.3.
You're showing what, I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay, so in 24-25 proposed budget for us, you guys are showing like 59.8 million, and my book is showing 63.3.
So what we did was we backed into your expenditures essentially. We took the state state and federal and local other sources that we were, I guess from the.
Oh, the local other source, you deducted that?
No, we put that in, and then we took our prior year's transfer, add 500,000, gave us our revenue number of 59.8, so therefore to balance, you have expenditures of 59.8. So that's our differences between, that we have to work through, I believe, but that's just our presentation in now I do think some of the state dollars it seems like that might be a moving target.
It is.
And so this was based on what we knew back in your second presentation, I believe, not back to January, but maybe back to February. So we haven't updated that for the additional state revenue.
That
It
makes
seems
sense.
to be moving daily, so.
It does move daily, I know.
Yeah,
And in your pie chart showing the percent of schools, that included the transfers that came to us. So I want to make that clear,
it's
That-
the whole,
The entire thing.
the entire thing. So if someone looked at that pie chart, a citizen, and would think that strictly Powhatan money was going at 51.9%, but I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe it's more like 29%.
Yeah, million.
No, I'm talking about the percent of the total local Powhatan budget. So if you take our budget, subtract out the transfers and compare it to the money that is actually collected from Powhatan for real estate taxes, personal property taxes, et cetera, that actual percent, and fortunately, I couldn't find where I calculated it real quick, but it's in the 20s. So it's not 51.9%. And so many people think that the revenue that they pay directly to Powhatan, that the schools are taking over half of that money, but that is not an accurate presentation. Thank you.
And this does, on the same side, county side as well, this does include state, other sources, but understandably, you all derive a much larger portion of yours from state and ours too. So, yeah, we can show it and break it down that way. Again, this is not, although they look like schools, it is very large, this is not atypical from other jurisdictions.
Oh,
Again, some
you're
schools more,
exactly
some
right.
schools less, but
Yes.
this is very normal. You know,
Yeah.
again, you all have many more employees, and serving students is expensive.
I just want people to understand exactly how the school's funded, that it's not coming from their it's their tax dollars, but it's not strictly their Powhatan tax dollars. Thanks.
Any questions for Mr. Chardon? Any of the staff? Okay. We can turn it over to you, Mr. Taylor, for the next question. Part B.
All right, well, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Tygan and maybe Mrs. Holloway to run us through our budget.
Yes. We're just having to switch over computers. We have, first I would like to thank the members of our finance team are here. Mrs. Debbie Holloway and Mrs. Susan Martin, who is celebrating her birthday with us here today. You know, that they have done the lion's share of work on this budget, and so I want to acknowledge their efforts. Our budget process, I think a little bit different from counties, started much earlier in the fall. We start at the beginning of October with we talk about it through August and September, and by October, we're starting to ask our schools and various departments to start putting together, I guess what you would call a wish list. We usually preface that with, think needs over wants, because we know that there's usually not the funding to really address wants, but we try to focus on needs. And so this is a process that goes on. We finally get the General Assembly provides a dollar value in December, it's mid-December, I guess, the 20th. And then we get a calc tool from the Virginia Department of Ed that actually says, then based on how they fund schools and the legislation, how it was passed, then what does that mean for us as a school division? And so, that's where we start. Originally, we were at our 1% bonus was what was projected. And then as Mr. Chardine and I continued to collaborate, we know we started at about 3%. And then as the county administrators around the region were increasing that, schools around the region went up to match that. And I have heard the same thing he has as far as there are localities that are higher than the 4%, and in some areas much higher than that. But we had settled on 4% would be what we would try to provide for our staff. And so out of that, we know there are a number of we're funded on a SOQ, which is a standards of quality that is very outdated. I mean, there isn't any school system in the Commonwealth that actually funds according to that SOQ. And that's been a part of a JLARC study, and if you've heard things about the JLARC study through the General Assemblies, things that are coming out of there, that's one of the big things has been, how do we appropriately fund schools from the state level with SOQs that better reflect the reality of what it takes to run a school system. And so, but those SOQs also impact how much, when there's a percent increase, like a salary increase or even a bonus, they always calculate it based on those standards of quality positions and not on our actual staffing. So more of that actually comes from our locality than I think people understand. And so when someone says, if the governor says we're going to give a 5% increase, which it was this year, it is significantly less than that. The funding we're getting to cover a 5% increase across the division. So just wanted to share that. One of the things that we have done as well, I know you all did this last year. It was about this time, I think you were really starting to get in to a compensation and class study. And we started this in the fall. As far as, I think our kickoff was in October, maybe late September. And through that process, we have just recently got to where we have what I would call final results. And those have been shared with the board here, and it will be shared at our meeting publicly on Tuesday evening. And through that study, they had given us preliminarily upfront to anticipate an across the board 6% increase. Not every position, but if you took everything together, it would be like a 6% increase. So that is what we did. And, so this is something that we have really, now that we have final results, we've been able to focus in on that a little bit more. And I think you will see in the sheet that was provided to you this evening, that was not provided, but some of you saw this earlier. It is, for complete compensation to rectify what they feel are inconsistencies and that we are below the midpoint of the region would be about $1.35 million. Now that is without benefits. I want to be very clear, that's without benefits, that's just salary. We know that last year the county did this outside of the budget process, and we have, just so you understand the funds, we have done it inside the budget process, if that makes sense.
Yes.
If we ask questions,
Yes, Mr. Youngers.
Dr. Tyatt, in trying to recall the presentation yesterday, the increase recommended by the consultants to get to midpoint was 8%.
I know there were a lot of numbers, and I actually don't have my book with me, but the 8%, Miss Allison is here and she may be able to speak to it better. I'm pulling the language out. It was not 8% of the total salaries.
To get to mid.
It was the range,
It was
so
the
that
range.
midpoint was 7.8, but that was the range to get us to. So they told us overall, we we were looking for, to budget for like a 6%. Because not every range is, every scale is gonna change.
That's not across every.
Right.
No. And even the 6% wasn't across every employee and every classification. There were certain classifications of employees that were further below, lower on from the further distance beneath the midpoint than others. Whereas others were maybe even on point for the midpoint or higher. And of course, those individuals would not receive any additional compensation.
Let's be clear, what the consultants have come and you're all going to adopt is already cooked into the budget you're proposing. Yes, no?
No,
Maybe so.
not totally. It was originally, but when we were asked to back out an extra 1.5 million, then it's not totally in there at this point. But that would be the cost to address the full amount. That what I told you, the 1.35 million plus benefits.
Okay.
And we have budgeted in our in the budget that we're presenting today, it is budgeted with about 1.3, 1.2. But that, again, the 1.34 does not include the benefits, which is about another 26% of the total cost. Make sense?
Where's mine?
Clear as mud. Throughout the process, one of the things that we do is we have budget workshops. And the budget workshops that's when we're doing each department by department. And so that's a process that we go through that's very public. And then we also, I know there's things in there that I'm going over. I'm trying to give you a higher level, but you have the more details in your presentation. When we do get funding from both the locality as well as from the state. The state determines their budgeting based on an average daily membership. Because we have kids, we start with a certain number of kids move in and out. That's one way it changes. The other is every day. I don't know that we ever have a day that there's 100% of the kids in school. And so they use that average daily membership to do what our projections are. And so for this, the projections we've used is the average daily membership of 4,164.84 students. Now, I guarantee you, we have whole students, just in case you're wondering. And then just for comparison, wanted you to be able to see what a comparison of per pupil costs versus the state average. So there's various things that go into that, but the last data that was available was in 2022. We were still waiting on the 2023 data from the BDOE. We are ranked 108 out of 132 school districts in Virginia. I will say, because I believe of our staff, our teachers in our classroom, the commitment, you will see that the sheet I handed out to you earlier that compares that amount of expenditure with the student outcomes, that while we are ranked as low as we are in what we invest in our education, in mathematics, when we look at the region and within our region here, we rank number 4 in mathematics and we rank 5th in English language arts. So we're, from my perspective, that translates into our citizens are getting a really good deal on the return on their investment in what they invest in schools. We have provided for you, I'm not going to run through all this individually, but to provide an overview as what the total cost is within more like, as well as we include Chesterfield and Henrico because of their proximity. In addition, we have our local costs, our state cost, and our federal costs. And so this is all available online for those at home as well. So just wanted to make sure, like I say, more information, but sometimes some people want to dig into that and we wanted to be able to provide that. This financial plan continues to be updated because, as was noted in the beginning, we are definitely still working on a moving target and will continue until we have a final governor's budget. And we're hoping that's before August this year, but we know that sometimes it can take a while. But we are proposing a budget of $63.3 million essentially. That's an overall increase of 3 million from last year, but also important to note in the local transfer, it's a little over, it's 5.6 million, 5.6 million. Sorry, 0.56 million, get the decimal place correct, over what we did last year.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So the 63.2, does that include the CIP projects that you guys are requesting?
No, sir.
So that's
CIP is
outside of-
completely separate from
That'll
this.
be separate. And
Yes.
so the CIP projects are all money you're gonna be asking for from the county. The state doesn't know what those are.
At this point, we have no state funding to help support it. So it would be all locality. And Mr. Benway will give you an update on that, where we have I've done, I think, what we refer to as a peanut butter spread of trying to spread projects over multiple years. To meet our needs while still being able to keep our buildings operational.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Tigan, so this, just to be clear, the 63.2 fully embraces the results of the salary study.
No, sir, because when we did this, we cut.
So this is not what you're asking.
No, this was is the proposed budget before we got the final results today about what the salary is. And so that would be, in addition to that, we have plugged in about 1.2 million if we did the complete salary study, figuring, 1.35 with the 20, and if we add the benefits, I would assume we would be about $800,000 short of what we projected, because we were splitting it out over 2 years when we were asked to reduce the budget.
If you do split it out over 2 years, when can we have a number to access?
We will have it to you on Monday.
Sure.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kisner.
So is that gonna include, so the salary study, they also study the benefits that your employees get and recommended up that?
No, but
So
when
I
I
don't
say,
understand where the 26% increase in benefits is coming.
okay, this is just based on actual hourly rate, so it's strictly just salary. And so on top of salary, we always have benefits, which include the VRS and FICA, Social Security and everything. It does not include like health insurance and all that. There's no increase in that. As Mr. Chardine said, that was flat, but we don't pay that for our staff. So that flat rate, there's no impact of medical insurance on any of this conversation about compensation in class.
So what is the 26%?
VRS, which is the Virginia Retirement System that we all have to pay for, that's based on salary, and FICA. And group life.
So if you give somebody a current employee a 4% increase, you're also technically gonna increase the benefits of the meeting as well.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
that's not reflected in the salaries.
No, because they work across different states, this was just hourly rates, what their currently hourly rate is. And then with where that stands comparing other hourly rates within like divisions in Virginia, here locally, relatively.
Thank you.
I will, and I will say for, that we also, with that reduction in the 1.5 million, in addition to taking, that there wasn't total funds covering the salary increase, we also did not, we weren't able to address any of our initiatives, and I'll show you what those are. And so that was, we had planned on half of the salary and all of the initiatives to address needs, but I'll walk through those in just a second, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. So, you know, I think you all know how we get our funding, and so we do have food service that operates differently. That's usually a separate line item, and they're needed to cover the cost of providing the school breakfast and lunch programs to students. It is budgeted at 1.65 million, and it is part of our total budget. And this is just our pie chart of where our funds go, where you can see what is coming from the local transfer to the other local sources, state resources, state sources, the state sales tax, federal sources, and then that food service piece. And you can see what percentage they are.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Titan, the state sources at 37.74. Is that reflecting anticipated from what the governor going to do?
No, that
This
is
is
what,
historic.
this is what we have now from, we're basing everything on the December 20th budget released by the governor. And because that's the only thing we have at this point.
So that's reflected in this.
Right. You know, they have updated calc tools for the House and Senate, you know, budgets at different times throughout this process, but nothing is firm. So we have stuck with the governor's budget that was presented on December 20th. And so we have provided expenditure information here to show, you know, based on the information as presented, the changes in salaries and wages and benefits. Those would obviously be changed as well with the salary study, if we increase that to the total, being able to do that in 1 year as the county did, instead of having to do it over 2 years. We have, oops, sorry. You know, we have some purchase services that we use. We do, you know, that's around with some of our facilities work that we do, our custodial work. Other charges, materials and supplies, which obviously running a school system, that's significant. A small capital outlay and then transfers. So here is where our expenditures are. So you see between salaries and benefits, the blue and orange area, that's a significant portion of our funding. That's where it's going.
Mr. Chair.
So,
Okay, so I'm new at this,
Yes.
so I have a question. Am I to assume that the schools get salary raises every year?
It can, but it varies. There are some years, absolutely, there has been none. You know, but I know that with Mr. Chardine and myself, we have tried to keep in step with what the county does. You know, but there are years that there have been zero increases.
And then I have one more question. What year was this SOL reflected?
It's last year's.
23.
Yes, ma'am. So it was the most recent we would have.
Mr. Chairman, it's not like, can the consultants have modeling that you would look at the impact if you gave no raises in terms of the competitiveness of the salary? If you reduced it below 4.
Not without paying more, because that's not a part of our contract. I don't believe. I mean, because, well, I mean, their salaries are their salaries, so, I mean, we can probably project what that would be given time, because it would be changing, you know. We'll check into it, but I mean, asking them to do it, I'm not, yeah. Just don't want to increase our expenditures.
Just trying to understand the
Yeah.
impact. If the salary increase was 100%.
And well, really, that doesn't change what they're recommending, because we weren't compounding it. We were, you know, if someone's salary needed to be adjusted, it would be there, and then the 4% would be on top of that. So I guess it would impact it, but it's not, it's like if I'm an employee that they say, I would get a 2.5% increase is what I need to get where I need to be on the mid-scale, then for my years of service, then it wouldn't be 2% and then a 4% on top of it. It would be a 6.5%. You know, it wouldn't be the 2.5 and 4. We weren't intending to compound it. So we, as indicated, we do have initiatives. They total just under $600,000 that have been submitted by department heads and our administrators. These requests were discussed through the leadership team process and brought to the school board, and the school board was able to prioritize them from, you know, their perspective, as well as add additional initiatives if appropriate, if they felt that it was needed. Again, they are not in the financial plan at this time. You might ask why we have initiatives. I think, you know, that's always a good question, is why are you asking for the things you're asking for? So I thought it would be appropriate to show you the why and then explain the, you know, the what. We currently are looking at, you see the areas of red within, this is the school accreditation model. And in mathematics, despite the fact that we're 4th in the region, we are not performing at that level with a number of our students at a number of schools. And so that's an area of obvious concern and requires additional remediation, summer school, things like that, that there is a cost to. The yellows are level 2s. Level 2s mean that obviously you're not green, but you're not red yet. So that's that's where we are in mathematics, and you can see the same kind of color patterns. It really is affecting our students with disabilities, is probably the most significantly impacted group here. So you'll see that reflected in our requests. Oops. The first request related to some reorganization would be an assistant director of special education. This would be partially funded from our federal dollars that we get, which would be approximately 50% of the cost. We are having significant issues. This has been an issue, particularly post-COVID, is with behavior of our students. And part of the problem is not only are the students who are having behavioral issues losing instructional time when they're not in the classroom, when they are misbehaving within that classroom, they're taking away quality instructional time from other students. And so there's a, you know, to me, a double impact to this. So we would like to be able to provide a behavioral specialist at the elementary level and at the secondary level, and create a program where kids could go to and have more, while they're still working in the classrooms, having a place where they can come out of and work on those behavior skills and then work them back into a classroom. But do that in just, bless you, one of our elementary schools. And then obviously the next priority is our middle school. Assistant Director of Facilities, with all of the projects we have coming up. That is a high priority need. We are expecting the revenue from that to come from funds from the PLC, where you all are, Parks and Rec is using part of our building, community matters and whatnot. They are, we have been funding the full support of that building for the last 2 years. And so transfer, doing a lease option for the county to use that as long as they need it. And so that would benefit, that would help cover the cost, but also it helps cover, like right now, we're responding to all issues within not only our buildings, but that facility. We requesting for tuition paid to county staff for their children to attend. And we say county staff because it's not just schools. We've offered for the county students. Last year, we said they could, if they wanted to come work in Powhatan, but didn't live in Powhatan, they could bring their students here for a reduced tuition rate, just like our employees can. We were proposing to eliminate that to help us better attract and keep candidates. I will say from our statistics, over 60% of our staff lives in Powhatan, in the Powhatan Mosley area. So that's significant. They are putting their tax dollars back in, but for that other 40%, being able to bring their children with them, it says they value the education work that they are part of providing for our students here in Powhatan, and support that instructional process. School psychologists, something we have not done before is hire interns. So they've completed their coursework, but they have to have supervised training. And so that comes with our school psychologists being able to oversee that. But it comes at a much reduced cost for providing those services. And then we'd also hope that that would help us recruit psychologists into Powhatan, because we struggle for any mental health. I'm sure as you all do as well for the mental health providers. The licensure renewal fee is for, if it's minor, it's $2,000. It just, most localities now provide that because for our certified staff that need a license to be able to operate. That's a once every 10-year renewal for our teachers, which is our largest group. So that's a rotating over, you only have about 1/10 of your staff in a year having to renew. We're also looking to increase the hourly rate. We have not increased that hourly rate except through ESSER funds for many, many years. We are paying people to work with our most needy students when you think of homebound, summer school, tutoring, and we're paying them less than a brand new teacher makes on an hourly rate. And so we need to be able to increase that rate. We wanted to extend the contract for an elementary school counselor. We have done that at the middle school and high school level. This provides coverage throughout the summer and thinking about summer school to have a counselor on staff. We have proposed a very small amount, again, just a little over $5,000 for an employee referral program, because that is how we get most of our employees, is through new employees, is through referrals. The teacher tuition reimbursement, we have the ACA, the Advanced College Academy, which allows our students to be able to earn an associate's degree and graduate from J-Sarge prior to their graduation here in Powhatan. They graduate like the first week of May and graduate the third week of May from us. But we have to have teachers that are qualified. They have to have a master's degree and they have to have 30 hours in their content to be able to teach at J-Sarge. So that's due to their accreditation rules. And so we're looking for funding to help support that so that we could offer not only students in ACA, but students in other areas as well. to be able to offer, other students who just may want to take dual enrollment English or government or something in the career and workforce development field. And then additional substitutes for teacher scoring. One of the things that we have a performance task where our students in 9th and 10th grade do a total of 3 writings as a part of their writing assessment for the VDOE, but that we have to pull our teachers out of class to be able to do that. So while we're not really paying our teachers, we're paying substitutes to be in their classrooms. And quite honestly, the scoring process itself is wonderful professional development for our staff. Gifted classroom resources, our gifted education advisory committee is proposing a new process for identifying general giftedness. And so we know that will come with the need for some additional, materials there. Then adult education, we provide that for our family, for our community. For any of our senior citizens that have one of the golden passes, they get to take the classes free. So, there's an expense to that in addition to just the running the program itself, like, mailers and advertising. And that has not been funded previously. And then the request has been for a girls' soccer program at the middle school. And so happy to answer questions.
Jim,
Go ahead, sir.
of all the, I don't know all the attributes, but of all the money that came to the school system, how many FTE funded by the, now that money's gone? Those positions now, we're asked to fund. How many FTE?
I'm going to verify on the last time, we're
I
at
believe it's 11.
11.
There was
They were-
several teachers, several counselors, 2 custodians, and then the math interventions.
So one of the joys of getting money like that is it goes away, and we're left with the staff that either let them go down the road or increase ratios of students to teachers and all things that are not good for
It would impact class size, it impacts school counselors. We've added additional school counselors at the elementary and the secondary level.
11 slots, 11 FTEs.
I don't think it's total FTEs, those are
Yes.
positions, and some of them are part-time.
Yes. And I don't have that with me.
We'll get that to you.
Just a tough lesson. So downstream, there's no free lunch.
No, there is never.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Ms. Marcel.
can we go back to this behavioral situation?
Yes, ma'am.
And it appears that from what I'm looking at, it's at all the elementary, at the middle, and at the high school. Do you have a percentage of the students that we're having behavioral issues with?
I don't have an exact number for, percentage, but it's usually a very small percent really overall. But the impact it has on the school is significant. So, most behavioral programs, you would think with one teacher and an instructional assistant, you might have, like at the elementary level, the ability to service 6 to 8 kids. So that's a couple from, on average, 2 from each school, 3 from each school. And it varies from year to year, quite honestly.
And you're also looking at an assistant director for SPED, but it doesn't show the location, what the CO.
Central office, sorry. And that would be really for the 2 positions that then would be in central office specific to special education, would be really to have one focused on compliance and one focused on instruction. Because there are two very different sides to special education, but they come together for success for students.
So then the director is also at the,
Yes, central office, we have an assistant superintendent.
And do the sped teachers, are they presented with raises also? Or are they funded through state?
There is some funding that we get through state, through there's several different grants that finance different parts of special education. But the majority of the funding comes from the locality.
Got one easy question. Your license renewal fee, does that cover the continuing education classes that's through building grounds maintenance and stuff like that?
No, but we do offer tuition reimbursement for that for our employees that, and,
They do it every 3 years, not 10 years.
right, well, when we used to do it every 5 years and it went to every 10. About 5 years ago.
Mr. Benway's employees keep up their education, so pay for that if they ask for it.
If they wanted to do something to,
Yeah.
we would absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Steichen, I was at Pocahontas this past year and witnessed a student that was having a meltdown. And I counted, as I recall, four staff people that were involved in maintaining, guiding, protecting the safety of that child. So if that can be multiplied across all schools, I can see where behavioral specialists might be a benefit, not only to that child, but to the rest of the schools that would be disrupted.
I was gonna say, I had a superintendent one time that said, until you've lived in an elementary school, you won't believe that a 5-year-old can hold a school hostage. They can't. And it's, and, laugh about it. I've laughed about it, but it isn't funny at the
No,
time
funny at
because
all.
it can be very dangerous for the students. We have students that, what we call elope, and so they can elope from a classroom, which is probably, seems like what you're talking about, that they had left their classroom and were out in the school and they're trying to keep them in the school and safe. But they can also elope to outside the school, which is very scary. For school staff and quite honestly, the sheriff's staff who often help us with that. To make sure that we can keep a child safe. And we just, for the benefit of others, our staff is trained for, when that happens. That's why you see them, more around. We try not to put our kids, where we're restraining them. If we do, we're trained in how to do that. And there are certain expectations around that, and we have to read them.
Mr. Chair,
What's that?
you say you're trained for that. Is this specific to the sped teachers or is this all teachers?
Certain staff in buildings, but like our administrators, our school counselors, staff, some staff, but it is multiple individuals in a building at all levels.
So I can't help but keep going back to the discipline that can't happen, so to speak. Are these children that are being so disrupted, is it primarily sped or is this across the board?
It is not always special education. As we know, kids can be just defiant or, but what can happen is if it's without really working on corrective behavior, it can result in them being identified as a student with a disability.
Thank you.
If we're at a good point, I'll see if Mr. Benway wants to give a quick overview of FY25 and the CIP. And I think that was in your original packet.
Sure.
Yeah. No. FY25. You want to-
that out a little bit. So a little backstory why she's bringing that up. Back in 2014, we had Mosley Architects do a facility study. And in that facility study, they identified a number of projects to include the Landmark Center, Pocahontas Elementary HVAC system being replaced in the 2015 to 2019 timeframe, replaced in the PHS HVAC system in the 2022 timeframe, and the roof in 2023, and having much of the asphalt repaired and sealed in the 2016-2020 timeframe. So subsequently to that, my team, knowing that didn't happen, they've been working really, really hard to maintain these facilities. And I think they've been doing an outstanding job. And we had recently had another facility study done by Dewberry Engineers, and they came up with a number of projects that needed to be done. And they broke them out by priorities. Priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and priority 4. Priority 1 being the projects that are life safety oriented or mission impact, and then the entire school could shut down. Priority 2 being the potentially safety impacts, or they can affect a number of classrooms. And you'll see that the vast majority of the projects that we're talking about in FY25 are the priority 1 and the priority 2 type of projects. You see in the slide here that we see that our schools are getting quite old, and we see in our infrastructure these days. Next slide. So in Powhatan High School, our number 1 project is the HVAC system for the high school. Rooftop units have been giving us a lot of trouble. We've had communication boards that are no longer manufactured, not available commercially. We have we had to replace compressor, we had to replace control boards. Currently, as I left, the Landmark Center, we have the one RTU is having control system problems such that the social study hall and the language hall is having trouble. It's above 75 degrees right now. It's control system problems, the team's on it. We brought in HVAC, contractor, Havtech to look at it. They haven't found a solution yet. It's a tough problem. It's a control problem. I think it's in the software and the firmware at this point because they haven't isolated. So bottom line, we're really struggling with the HVAC system in our high school. The same can be said for some of the kitchen equipment. That's all original hardware. In the past year, we've had to do maintenance on the dishwashers, steamers, the warmers, and the refrigerators. I might kind of give an example. It's kind of like my old 2000 Chevy Tahoe. I babied that thing, and I got 360,000 miles out of it. But after a while, you just have to get into maintenance anymore. You just got to fight the cold and get something. Same issue with some of the water heaters. Only 2 of the original 3 are operating, and the other one is down hard. It's having trouble with its heat transfer tube. And the roof is scheduled for FY26. Next slide. So you'll see some of these costs broken out for FY25, and I've just highlighted the ones that were in FY25. Next slide, please. Next slide.
We ask questions.
Oh, question, sorry. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Fenway, at the high school, you have about $5 million for the HVAC, and then following year 6.1 for roof replacement. Is there any sense of doing those together?
Generally not, because the rooftop units may require a new pedestal, and that requires, a mechanical attachment to the structural roof. And so any roof contractor would want to have all that in place before they put the new roof down. So in standard industry practice, to do the HVAC first and the roof in the subsequent.
So why would you not switch the, I'm reading this correctly, you have roof replacement at FY26 and HVC at 25.
Correct. And
Why don't you get the roof fixed?
that would impact the warranty of the roof. In general, if you do a lot of maintenance, you bring a lot of
equipment up on the roof, that could impact the warranty of the roof. You don't want to have all the equipment in place that you plan on having there before you actually replace the roof surface.
I think they're forming the roof around the pedestals for the RTUs.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So you put the units up first and then you put the roof
Roof around, okay.
later.
That's how we did it on this building as well. We looked at, reviewed the same, we did the HVAC last year. It was same.
And I don't, Mr. Benway, you can correct me, but we also have a short window to do this work. It's the summertime. We can't do heating and cooling while the school's going on because the units are down. So we only have that short window of 10, 12 weeks.
One last thing I got to say, not as a question, and I don't, this is a meeting of dead horse. But that study that was done, all those things that were outlined to be done and then they were not done. That's amazing to me. And do you have any notion as to why? Whether it was before your tenure, but why? Why? And what's to prevent that from happening again?
So that's.
I was gonna say, they hold us accountable.
Oh, and
And our
we need to hold each other accountable. And, you know, if there's not some steps taken, a board 15 years from now faces the same
Yeah.
doggone thing.
My sense is that coming out of a recession 10 years ago, and so there probably wasn't funding, so they're trying to put money into construction and just try to piecemeal and pass the buck if you came down the road. That's, yeah, that's my thoughts.
I understand the pressure of unfunded mandates. I get that. When you gotta, do what the government tells you, the governor tells you to do. But we gotta make sure this doesn't happen.
And then,
Yes, sir, Mr. King.
So Robert brought up an interesting point. I'm looking at this county and Powhatan schools schedule of CIP projects. Why do these balances keep carrying over? And it looks like the money's there but never been spent.
$4.2 million.
So
Amounts.
there's $4.2 million
That's what it
sitting
told us.
somewhere.
well, and I'll tell you, CIP money doesn't transfer to schools, it stays on the county side. And when we do a project and incur expense on that project, we send the invoices to the county. So I'm sure, I don't want to answer where
So
the funding went, but it wasn't like it
So I
was.
guess two questions. Did the schools ever request the money from the county? And if it's still sitting there, why can't we use it towards the future CIP project?
So can I answer this question? Are you referring to the spreadsheet that you received? So I also emailed you all today with references to that. So the school buses, what was planned in 23, which is the biggest number on there, school buses. So the money that was in 23, originally we were gonna buy the 10 buses, but the schools got I guess it's called a grant
It was a
for
grant.
10 electric buses. So, but there were certain things that we were required to pay on those buses. That was about $278,000 that I'm trying to finish paying out. In March, I'm gonna bring to you an unappropriation to move $775,000 of that back to the general fund. Then there's $1,106,000 for buses this year. We just closed on the lease. The purchase order is in place. They are building the buses. And once they come, we will pay for those buses. That 2.8 million will be gone. The 600,000, this is school construction projects. That is school construction state funds that they received last fiscal year that has to be spent by June 30th, 2024.
What's being constructed?
It has a long list of things. It can be safety concerns. We've done we did the vestibules for redo the high school, 2 elementary schools. Some money for some HVAC. We did the dust collection system that at the high school in one of the carpentry. It was not good and could cause a fire, so that's being worked on. But
There's stage curtains.
Yeah, there's a really long list that I think they could probably provide. I keep up with it. We have a long spreadsheet of where we're balancing all those purchase orders, but these are projects that are going on. If we don't spend all that state money, I believe we have to give it back.
Yes.
But it has to be done by June 30. There's some high school improvements I do need to get with you on what's remaining there. I think we're done. That was some money predates everyone that's here. That will be unappropriated and sent back, and the $8,000 on the transportation radios. I believe that project is now done. We will be sending that money back. So it takes some time for me to get all of this stuff paid out. And once I know it's done, we clean those up and send it back to the general fund.
I mean, if you look at the first category, energy performance contract, well, back in twenty
That's
nineteen,
done.
it was $3.4 million.
And it's spent.
It doesn't show that though, because it says.
So if you look, what's been appropriated, the expenditures, the balance is zero.
Right, we got a balance here.
451 is for Powhatan High School improvements that we will get together. And I think we're done with whatever we're gonna use that money for, and that will be unappropriated. It just takes some time. So this one may be unappropriated. There's gonna be, of the school buses, 775,000 will be spent back. What is this one here? This one is still working on. They're still working on that project. They take more than 1 year.
Right, so my question is, if there's a balance there that's not gonna be spent, why can't we use it for the CIP?
Well, in essence, when you unappropriate it and put it back into the capital maintenance reserve and then you reappropriate for the new projects you are using, you're just going back and forth. Does that make sense? It's just accounting. So if we, okay, so if we, I'm gonna use round dollars. So if we have $500,000 in our, that we're saying in 25 that we're gonna use, but we're gonna put 250 back, a net effect, we're only using 250 of our capital maintenance reserve. But because it's already been appropriated to specific projects, I have to unappropriate it and appropriate it to a new project. I can't just move the money around.
Right, so unappropriate it and then appropriate it to CIP.
Look, those are CIP projects.
But I mean, the future CIP, so they're asking for, $5.9 million right now in fiscal year 25. Can't we use some of this money to apply towards that balance so the county didn't have to
The ones,
shell out part of
the
much
ones
money?
that are finished, but not all of those are finished is what I'm trying to say.
Wow, we got stuff from 2017 that's still isn't finished.
No, sir. The only ones that are not finished is this school bus. We haven't gotten them in. This 1.1. This is complete. I will send 775,000 back here. This 281 is not complete. They're finishing that one up. This will probably, no, that PLC HVAC is not complete. We have a contract on that right now. They're working on it. I've seen them in the hallways.
today.
This 451 is the one I need to sit down with her and make sure they're complete with that one.
PFC stands for.
Well, it's the Landmark Center, but it's
Our
their,
buildings.
the central office, school board building.
When you're done. Now I got a headache.
Sorry, I'm trying to make this easy.
Well, it just seems like there's money sitting out there that could be,
So,
that could be used for.
now he's trying to steal water.
Maybe I'm wrong, it just seems there's money out there that could be appropriated to the CIP project that the school's gonna be asking for, so we don't have to fork out as much money.
And so what I want to explain is when money goes into that CIP, due to staffing and time and how long it takes to do procurement and issue contracts and deadlines, we will not always spend that money in fiscal year 25 projects may not all get expended in 25. It may carry over into 26 for those 25 projects that are still going on. For example, when we did the the new middle school was a $35 million issuance. Now, it did get done a little faster because you got to get the school open, but it was still a multi-year project.
So basically what you're saying, the $5.9 million they're asking for in fiscal year 25, all those projects may not get completed and get carried over at once.
Correct. Depending on how long it takes sometimes it takes, we do it on our side, Public Works, it could take
Couple of years.
3 to 6 months to just get a procurement written, published, interview people, do a contract, then get it started.
So then if the HVAC work doesn't get finished in 25, you can't do the roof in 26.
Right.
But I believe they probably will because they have only summertime to get it done. So it just depends on the type of project. Lead times, the buses take a little bit of time. Those are gonna be done. All that bus money is gonna be done by the end. So everything on that page will either be completed or sent back to capital maintenance
So
reserve.
is there any way to contractually obligate somebody to complete the project within a certain period of time so they don't have carryover? How do you say no? Sure there is. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
What the supply chain issues now.
Yeah.
Maybe prior to 2020.
Things are tough out there.
Mr. Chairman,
Good.
if I could, I understand there's planning time.
Yes, sir.
and other things that are impinging on this, but with my simple little mind, totaling those balance numbers, it's 4.2 million bucks. And I understand it might, but I appreciate your explanation. Let me ask you specifically the buses.
Sure.
It shows a balance of $2.1 million and a request of 1.106 for 24. And I believe there's another request for FY 25 buses.
We replace about 10 a year.
How much of the 2.163 that's a balance can we use to fund the buses being requested for this year?
No, sir.
None.
That one,
Start walking.
It's a liability.
the 775,000, so prior to about two, 3 years ago, we always leased buses because we didn't have the cash to do it. In 23, we did have enough money, or we were anticipating paying $1.1 million in cash for 10 buses. That would have gotten complete in 23 had we not had the opportunity to get 10 electric buses that actually saved us $775,000. So we could take the 25 buses and say, how many can we buy with $775,000 in cash, if that's what the board chooses to do? It's just not what we presented currently. The 1.1 million in 25, they are in the process of building. Do we have a delivery date on those 10 buses?
Not a delivery date, but.
They're ordered. I've done the purchase order for it,
Yes.
so I know that.
It was last October.
Well, yeah, that too.
Oh, you mean for
The
the
current,
electric?
not the 10 electric, the current buses.
We've received 5 of the 10 electric buses.
No, we've received 9,
Oh, we have received them now?
So
but they're talking the
the
buses.
newest 10
We
buses,
just
Yeah.
placed
or
an
actually,
order.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
believe
10,
it's
it's
7
it ended
regular
up being-
buses and 1 special
we ended up
ed or
only
something
getting-
like that.
so we wanted 10, but now the costs have gone up, so we only got 8
So at a future,
for the amount of money that we put in
at
there.
a future budget workshop, the amount of money we're going to put back into reserve, we'll know that.
In March, I plan to bring it to your regular board meeting.
March, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
Go
Sarah.
ahead, ladies.
okay, I'm a watchdog on this money thing. So when I added this up, it looks like to me that there's about $1.2 million that will be unappropriated. If you look at the 2 things you mentioned that are complete from the okay. So this has always bothered me. So that money was appropriated for the schools, but because we were really savvy and got free buses, we lost out on that money. So why can't some bookkeeping, I couldn't find anywhere in the code or anything why this works this way. Why can't that money, and automatically unappropriate for that use and appropriate it back, say, to go towards the HVAC? What? It's like you give somebody.
It is ours.
No, it's like you give
I'm
somebody,
just kidding.
you give somebody a Christmas present and you ask for it back or something. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're
So
saying.
I'm saying that 1.2 million was always earmarked for the schools.
So can I just?
Yeah, oh,
So the-
please, I want to understand
So the
this.
1.2 million would have come from the county's capital maintenance reserve. So the schools has a separate one that
Right.
we do use for some of the smaller
Right, I know
facility
that.
needs.
I know that.
Then the other came from the county's capital maintenance reserve. And I know we're all in county, so I'm just gonna explain how I keep this separated. When it goes back into there, then that funds are available for when we fund your next round of buses or some other large project. So it's not like
Goes away.
we're taking it away from you altogether. We're pulling it back. We look at what our balances are. We look at what our next CIP is, what the needs are, how much can we pay as pay-go on county or school side, and then we reappropriate those funds to this project.
So
So
if you have a $5 million ask and you've got 1.2 sitting over here, you can deduct that 1.2 from the 5. And we, in essence, are only asking you for 3.8. No, I'm still asking for 5.
You're still asking for
But I'm
5.
saying the impact to the new money that's needed to be put in that CIP fund is really only 3.8. If you see what I'm getting at, the 1.2, the money is there. It's just labeled different ways.
Right.
So to meet a $5 million need, we only really need new dollars of 3.8 million.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, say strategy, but sort of strategy behind looking at when you're asking for, I'm not saying you, county involved.
Right, I know.
And we're looking, when I look at the whole CIP with Brett, and I've also sent to the financial advisors because they're the ones that are going to advise us on when is the right time to issue debt.
Right.
We look at projects and I look at projects what are projects that make sense if we're gonna issue debt, which are usually larger construction, HVAC, building an elementary school, building a county admin building. Those are ones you want to debt. A lot of times you don't want to issue large debt and start putting a bunch of tiny little projects into one big debt issuance. So when I bring all that money back and I look at that, you're asking for 5 million for an HVAC, even though yes, in theory, it's a net of 3.8, I'm most likely going to do the debt issuance on that 5 million.
I get it, because you get a
as an
better rate.
HVAC. And then those
Right.
other 1.2 million would then be able to help pay for the furniture that you may need, or
Right.
cafeteria equipment that I would
Right, I get it.
essentially put into a debt issue.
It's a financial way of keeping your costs down of borrowing, because you're borrowing for one specific thing.
Right,
It's like in your home life, instead of going out and charging a bunch of little stuff on a credit card, it's better to pay cash for the little stuff and
Right.
put your car
Yes.
on one card note. I get it, but if it's just a way that the public somehow could understand that there were times that the school system was very efficient and got free buses and actually saved quite a bit of money. You know what I'm saying? Just, it's public relations.
Mr. Powers, you had a question? We'll let Mr. Benway finish that.
I know.
No,
I'm sorry.
He didn't get very far.
Mr. Chairman. I heard something that got my spidey tinglies going. So you said,
Thing or-
so spidey tinglies.
Okay.
Okay,
So you said, when the school requests CIP money, it goes into a fund. And then as the construction projects are completed, we issue that money. So in essence, we as a board have control over those projects.
we do a hybrid.
Well,
Once
but
you've
what I-
been appropriated, I take care of the stuff that we're paying for out of my CIP. I do pay the bills. I don't control how they procure it, who they select for their vendor. I do issue the purchase, well, they issue a purchase order and I issue a purchase order. Hopefully one day, Keystone, we won't be doing that.
Right.
But then I track it with Debbie, with Mr. Benway. We will track all of these projects and make sure that we are staying within the budget. I mean, for example, that state school construction projects right now, because it is a bunch of different things that the state's allowing us to pay for. I work very closely with them. I keep up with the spreadsheet. I send it to them and say, am I missing anything? So yes, I do control when the disbursement happens. I do the bond drawdowns on all of that debt from US Bank or whoever our trustee is. That is my responsibility. I don't tell them who they can award the contract to.
Right,
I have been on the bid committees
To
before.
Mr. Powers' point earlier, to keep history from repeating itself, like you guys did this study, they had all these projects, but they never got done. Well, if the money's there, you need to spend it.
I don't think that's what happened.
Well,
I think some
so
of
for
those
20
didn't
years,
make it into
nothing,
the
I
CIP
mean,
that I was received, so.
Mr. Chair,
Goodness, man.
at one time, the money that was in the school CIP, we could not use all of it. It was only a certain portion of it that could be used.
You're talking about the school capital maintenance reserve?
Yes,
That's a different, yeah,
that's a different fund.
Pot of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Which has $990,000 in it right now.
But aren't we still limited to only being able to use a
Not
portion of it?
anymore,
Not anymore.
but it all still becomes before the board of supervisors and they have to approve whether you can use it or
But
not.
I guess something
But it's not pigeonholed to that
kick this
50/50.
around, but
Okay.
down the road, some kind of checks and balances to where stuff that needs to get done doesn't get ignored for 10 years, and now all of a sudden we've got to shell out millions of dollars because it's an emergency. You know, as my famous saying, and my wife says, poor planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine.
What happened?
She does have it on her.
Right.
But I will say on like the HVAC system and the roof, you know, the original study that was done said in 22, problem is we didn't have the funds then. I remember that was coming off COVID. So, you know, we are just beyond when we should have done it by a couple of years based on an old study. It wouldn't reduce the cost of it. The only thing is, because it's post-COVID, it's a lot more than it would have been pre-COVID, you know.
I thought I saw something in those studies like in 2014.
It was in 2014, that list starts in 2014, and it was 2014 to 2019. 23. And so that's where it recommended that in 20, I think.
It's 2022 for the HVAC and 2023 for the roof. That's what they recommended. And I didn't mean to open this can of worms with that. I just want to point out that it's more than just Dewberry engineers, my technicians saying that what's going to be done.
But it's where we are.
Right.
And to Robert's point, let's not, we've got to put something in place. And I understand the board can't tell you how to spend your money. We just give it to you, but there's got to be a way where we can come up with some plan like, okay, this is what you requested, this is what it's for, this is what you got to spend.
And I think that from my perspective, that's what's helpful about having like these joint meetings, that we have one around the CIP in the fall or whatever before we're going into that, and then, being able to talk about budgets. I mean, it helps to be in the same room and be able to talk about things and say, what is the progress?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you. To Mr. Kenny's point, how much money is in the operation school budget for maintenance?
This point,
We're just. How much money in my budget?
Not excluding staff.
for facility,
Yeah, what's that, like 1.8?
not much,
so.
no, not,
I
I mean, some of
Are you
that's
asking about capital
contract.
outlay?
The biggest bulk of it is our custodial
Right.
contract. He doesn't have a whole lot. And then what we did have in there for CIP items, we took out because the county said we now could use that capital maintenance reserve. So he doesn't have any increases for facility, updates in his budget at all.
That's a problem.
Well, no,
That's a problem to me.
because now we can use capital maintenance.
Right,
Funds.
we had
We
some,
had
in there,
500,000 in it.
but then y'all said we could
That-
use the
that'll
capital,
go away
so we
like
took it out.
In terms of the size of these projects.
So the
Right,
things
it's
we're
used for
gonna use
little
it for
things.
are smaller things like paving projects, different things that schools need, new blinds, new painting, floors, carpet, stuff like
Here's the
that.
question. You're gonna put a new HVA system in, on the roof of the high school. You know when it goes in, that it's got a lifetime of, I'll take a number, 12 years. Or 20, whatever the number is, and there's some life expectancy of that. And when you get to that point, if you haven't had a sinking fund that you save that money, we will be right back here
We-
again.
Schools really can't save money though. I mean, as far as all of our money goes back at the end of the year, if there's any excess.
You have to save.
You
the money.
save the money. Yes.
You
That's the
save.
CIP
It's
and all that
we,
stuff.
it's we.
It is we,
It is we, I get that.
but just the funding
It would be
mechanism.
mostly irresponsible for me. 4 quarters from now, I'll be buried somewhere. I won't be here. Will we face this again if we don't take some steps to alleviate the issue? There's got to be money set aside to take care of facilities.
That's why we're
We do
together.
well,
That's why we're together. This you have a question?
other than borrowing, I don't see much evidence.
I would just like to say that we went back and went through our budgets as new people came in and the monies that were spent. And a lot of times there's conversation about, misusing of funds and misspending of funds. There was no evidence of that.
I'm not
Even-
suggesting that.
No, I'm just saying, because the previous people did different kinds of bookkeeping. Okay, and more in a one pot and take it out as needed. Where in this process, we are being very meticulous about saying, for this line item, we anticipate spending this amount of money. So that we keep a better record of it, so that these kind of things don't happen.
Where does the discipline come from? Make sure that HVA system that you put on that high school next year, when it wears out, there's gonna be money to replace it. Who's going to discipline themselves to make sure?
It's gotta be communication between these boards.
Yes.
I
Like
totally,
I said, that's why we're here.
yeah.
So, Mr. Chair,
Oh, yeah.
you did hear what Dr. Tigan said. Schools cannot save money. So we have to, basically, it's like at the end of the year, you're done with your budget. To save,
We can save for you.
you have to do it. It has to be your responsibility to save that. So that's why this book is so lovely. You can go through and you can start a really nice plan, like a savings plan for children's college. We'll have a savings plan for Powhatan school facilities.
Well, instead of a CUP, we'll have a CIP for the board.
Been one, please do it.
Thank you.
No work, Ken.
So I guess the good news and bad news is because of slowly declining enrollment, we've taken off the new elementary school from in the land with the SIP.
And I will say, this is part of collaborating and trying, looking at the model and trying to see where we can get. We do understand that land is something for potential growth in schools and something that we need, to have on our radar. So don't be surprised if next year there isn't land back on the CIP so that we can get land while we can, as we continue to watch enrollment.
It's going to cost a lot more tomorrow.
It is.
Have a proposed area in mind?
We have some thoughts, but nothing just thoughts. We usually don't talk about land
Yeah.
in public.
Well, Mr. Chair, then that's actually a good question, because we know there's that plot of land right between our landmark center and the elementary center. So we've got, like I said, it's cheaper today than it is tomorrow. But, just kind of, from the gurus and the people who have been around forever in Powhatan, somebody probably knows somebody that owns it, and maybe start working deals for us.
I'd say even if we're not necessarily planning to fund it now, having it on CIP allows us when there's development proposals to potentially ask somebody to proffer land, or we can use cash proffers towards it, but it has to be in our CIP to qualify for a lot of that. So even if we just keep it on there to leverage opportunities in the future.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I like that.
Very good.
Proffers, know about those.
Okay.
I promise I'm done.
Next slide, please. And next slide. Pocahontas Landmark Center, actually known as the PLC.
Keep rolling.
The demolition of the A, B, and D wing is, the B, C, and D wings is another one of our top priorities. Mrs. Ward and Mrs. Wade can attest to the conditions of those wings right now. Mold is rampant in the B wing and C and D wing. The roof is caused structural damage in the B wing, and the roofs in the C and the D wing. If we're not going to demolish them, we need to replace those roofs next year, because they're not too far behind the B and D wing. So our recommendation is to demolish the B, C, and D wing from those buildings.
We need to make sure it doesn't mitigate in the office areas that we're using in the building.
Mr. Chairman? So where's the Christmas?
They're in the cafeteria of the D wing.
So where are they gonna go?
We've had conversations with them and been able to suggest connections to maybe be able to find a space. Because it's not something, without doing work to that area, they couldn't stay in there anyway. And so, that is a question, and I've not heard from them. I know they were going to start in January, making some connections. Mr. Chardon and I had spoken about it, and he had provided an opportunity. I followed through on that and made a connection. So I'm not sure where they are at this point.
I think it's a lot of storage that they need as well. Storage.
I heard it was 2,000.
2,000 square feet.
That's what I heard. I don't know how accurate that is.
I would say it's more than all the lights.
Yeah.
It seems
It's big.
Six.
Yeah,
You think it's 5? Maybe,
I just brought it up because we set a date and say, okay, we're gonna trash this place.
And we have been keeping them abreast of what we're, what we need to do in the building, and so, and trying to make connections and help, and I think they're working on that as well.
Christmas Mother's been part of our ongoing conversation the whole time we've talked about this for the last 2 years. So we have not walked into this with the idea of not even thinking about the Christmas out there, that they can fend for themselves. We've been very thorough, trying to make sure that they can find a home for themselves, because we know how important that is.
I've been looking myself.
I think everybody has.
And just coming to this conclusion right here of demolishing this building, it has been hard.
Yeah,
It's been very hard.
yeah.
And just FYI, in the third bullet there, the second sentence, that's why I called out the kitchen and the cafeteria in terms of the new roof and upgrading mechanical systems, specifically HVAC in that area, to the tune of $3 million. It's in bad shape. But in addition to the demolition work at the PLC, there's also quite a bit of HVAC work that needs to be done. As was pointed out, we're currently putting a new HVAC system in the technology and finance wing right now. But most of the rest of the building, to include the Parks and Rec, is operating on a system that's circa 1992. With the exception of chiller. That's a little bit more. Any questions on the Pocahontas Landmark Center? Next slide, please. And if we break out the costs, 425, 6. Next slide, please. Powhatan Middle School, the cafeteria furniture has not held up well to the abuse of middle school students. All the original chairs, there's only about 30% of them left. They're in storage now. Using the old school, the old chairs from the old middle school currently, and the tables starting to fall apart. So we really need to replace those with some school quality cafeteria furniture. In addition, we recently discovered some regular cracks, a couple of the classrooms. We don't anticipate it's an issue. I've reached out to the original architect. He's consulting with us, but the price you see there in the SIP has the architect come out, and it needs remedial work that needs to be done. And that's the best of our estimate at this point to move further at. And then finally, the old stadium, its bleachers, and the press box. Nothing was done when the middle schools constructed to upgrade those. The bleachers themselves are a nice secure foundation, and the press box has some woodwork there that needs to be replaced. It's solid wood, it's just not the metal rail that they require at that elevation. Any questions from middle school? Next slide, please. Let's break out the cost of the cafeteria furniture, as well as the work that needs to be done to the bleachers and the architectural work on the cracks. Next slide, please. Flat Rock Elementary, we're concerned that some flooring in the cafeteria and the corridor does not include the main corridor. Some of the VCT tile is starting to peel up, and we've replaced about 10% of that tile thus far. But upon inspection, it appears that the glue that was used in the initial installation is not holding up well. And we think that this is a pervasive problem in those areas, and we recommend replacing all of those tiles. The good news is that the problem is not occurring in classrooms in this building. In addition, there are a handful of kitchen appliances that are starting to fail and beyond repair, and that's included in this as well. Like this. So, cost breakout. Next slide, please. Everyone stop, you have any questions? Pocahontas Elementary, majority of the mechanical system has not been replaced since it opened. At the county admin request, we did spread out that HVAC work over 2 years, prioritized, we thought needed to be done first. So you can see the items that are being replaced, are being requested to be replaced in FY '25. And then in FY '26, we're going to finish up that HVAC work with the rooftop units and the zone dampers that are associated with it. There's some small work still CIP worthy, needs to be, some of the windows in the gym and the main hallway to be replaced. Questions? Next slide. Cost breakout. Next slide. Powhatan Elementary, as was mentioned, we've started the process of replacing the water source heat pumps that are in the majority of the classrooms. Supply chain issues got us. So we're only able to get the floor units installed, and those are on the exterior walls of the classroom. We weren't able to do the ceiling units. They have arrived. They're in our possession right now, and the plan is to finish it up in the month of June. As well as mentioned that we'll also in that time install a new security vestibule in the high school as well. But what was not on the CIP when I stepped into this job was the makeup air handler. Just to address the water source heat pumps. And so now that is showing up. It's 39 years old. It's still operating. We're still maintaining it, but its days are numbered. So requesting money to replace that. In addition, some of the playground work is original. We've been blessed with some PTA donation to get the new swing set out there, as well as the Head Start of Richmond helped along with some playground work in the pre-K program. But some of the original woodwork is starting to rot. We've had to take down some of those for safety purposes, and it looks like others might be following suit. We'll monitor that, as well as some of the original plastic playgrounds starting to crack and cause safety issues. Next chart, please. Any questions on Pocahontas? Okay, Powhatan. Next chart, please. Here's the transportation. I think we talked about this already. Next chart, please. What we didn't talk about is the request to add 4 parking lights in the parking area for the bus garage. In the winter months, it was very dark back there when they go to get in their buses, and sometimes parking at the end of the day. So for safety and security, we want to add some lighting back there for them. Start, please. And these are the division-wide needs that that Debbie was referring to in terms of trying to capture some of the things that are reoccurring that need to be done in all the schools: cafeteria tables, curtains, window blinds, carpets, and the like. Chart. So we haven't repainted the Flat Rock High School in over 10 years. The window blinds are original in both the high school and Flat Rock, and right now many of those are not able to open or close because the mechanism is broken. Next chart. Here's the proposed sequencing and breakout of some of those projects, as well as what we see is the asphalt need. You'll see it's heavily loaded in the first year. I'm concerned about some of those surfaces, specifically the bus loop and teacher parking in the back of the high school and Victory Lane. Those require extensive repair, if not repaving. Same thing can be said for the Pocahontas teacher parking lot, as well as the PLC parking lot. Parking there, as you can see, it's pretty well cratered. So we'd like to get back on a schedule where we can seal and repair and keep the damage at minimum. Next chart, please. Here's that summary. As Dr. Seigan says, we like to call it, we took the first 2 years, which were heavily front-loaded, and we spread those out, peanut butter spread to the first 4 or 5 years. And the thoughtful process having to do with the priorities in both Dewberry and inputs from the school staff and the team.
Any questions?
Chairman. What can we do collaboratively to make sure that we can build in layers? Obviously, when you look at big numbers, you have expectations for these big projects, but the little things add up. What can we do to make sure that we're building this out?
I think we need to look at it as an approach like we did the common class plan. Every year, we need to look at stuff and not get behind where it gets to a point where it's a disaster. Just keep up with it every year. Prioritize, it's the only way we can do it.
Yeah, make sure staff's,
Yes.
looking ahead for this and just expecting that so that we're not caught off guard. Because it's something that we need to move on and make sure that we're prepared for and not react.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman?
But it's probably that.
You put the chart, the summary chart back up.
And if I might, Mr. Nadi's, one thing too, I think that was an issue to look at this was just a culture of knowing that the county's not gonna pay for it at some point, why ask? So some of the projects, just knowing they were never gonna get funded, they have not gone there. I don't know. Now that's not the case, and whether we can fund it this year or not, making sure those things are shown. So I appreciate, the board and the superintendent, that they didn't create any of these needs. They're just the one bringing them forward to us and making us aware. So I think, the commitment that we're going to do that, not have that culture of that. Why bother asking something to get funded anyways? And I've heard there was some of that over the years as well.
And I think having a 10-year plan allows us to see and plan forward rather than, when you do shorter timeframes, I don't think you see all the things that cycle through. And so a 10-year plan helps you see that, I think, a little better. So I think that move to that was a good move from the county side.
Having it on a chart doesn't generate the money to pay for it.
No,
You've got to set that aside. You have to have a sinking point to take care of these expenses. If you don't, you're going to wake up and deal with this again in the future.
Well, we're giving you a plan right now saying this is what we're projecting for the next 10 years. Just taking the chart of asphalt. We're saying we're going to need to make these paving projects over the next 10 years in all 6 of these locations. So then it's on you guys as a board of supervisors to make sure that funding is there so that these things can happen for us. So, you're telling us that we need to make sure that we're doing these things. You guys are the ones that hold the purse.
We'll do it.
We're saying that this is what we need to do.
I would do it, you won't like it.
As long as the money's there for us, it's okay, we won't care.
now I'm gonna put a little thing on there that as long as we have the money, then we need to educate our children.
Yeah, there you go.
And there are two different needs.
That's the balance. The question I have of the 26 million in FY 25, what are we proposing to borrow? And do we have the capacity to borrow these amounts of money at the current tax rate to take care of debt?
So
My understanding is the answer to that is no.
For all of the 10 years? Is that the question?
You pick whatever timeframe that we can afford.
Yeah, so a couple different ways to measure capacity. One, our debt policies, we do. We could borrow for all of this and stay under our debt policies, but again, we'd be violating our fund balance policies and eventually actually running out of fund balance. So
Re-election policies.
So, and again, that's assuming no changes on the tax rate. There's also something that's probably worth talking about briefly, the potential for a 1% sales tax. The General Assembly is putting forward. So that's an option as well. Ultimately, that's up to the voters of the referendum, but that we estimate that would be something like $31 million over the life of this. So that's an option, but for again, no revenues change. If that doesn't happen, then the full 10-year, every single project is not affordable, even if borrowed for.
Well, for whatever my one vote's worth, I want to keep the borrowing to the barest of minimums in light of anticipated revenue streams. Some of them forecasted, some of them woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe, but some of them that we're aware of could be a game changer. So rather than go out and borrowing all this money, I'd rather take the stuff that really is critical. And borrow it if we must, and then take the rest of it and wait to see what the revenue stream. I'm not talking about years and years and years away, but delay it until we see what kind of revenue streams we can have, so we don't have to borrow
Ms. Smith?
Well, to that point, I think that sounds like a good plan. But Mr. Chardon actually said what I was going to make the point of, that in years past, the conflict between the school board and the board of supervisors was just that. You only ask for what you just absolutely gotta have. And when it came to maintaining buildings, it was not a priority.
It is now.
Oh, yes, it is. And so we put on a lot of Band-Aids though, and we have done a good job of keeping what we do have working for longer than the estimated lifetime of the HVAC systems or even things going on in the buildings. So we're good at applying a lot of Band-Aids because Band-Aids were all we had.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm done.
So I have one question for you guys. So it seems in going through these, that a lot of these repairs you get caught by surprise. Do you guys not inspect the schools on a yearly basis? Are there no service contracts on the HVAC systems?
We have a team. I have a HVAC supervisor and a HVAC technician that we use, and they're darn good. They're darn good. And they a lot of times they're fighting fires, but they also do all the periodic maintenance, change the filters, lube the systems, like everything that they're supposed to do. We feel like we can do that in-house.
But what about building inspections? I mean, do you go through the school every year and look and see, like, I mean,
It's sort of by policy, we're supposed to do that.
it's a big time
Playgrounds,
DIY,
we're
or
supposed
you
to
can
have
tell when
8
tiles
inches
start to
of
crack.
mulch, safety wise. Yeah, there's a lot of things we look at safety wise.
Like, part of our safety inspections that we do.
Well, and to give Mr. Benway some credit, you're fairly new with us. So I think maybe in the past, again, a lot of us are so very new. A lot of things haven't been done in the past. And I think we've scored really high, Mr. Benway, that he's going to implement and put some procedures there. Because you're absolutely right. We should be having these inspections, but I think we've got somebody now that's fully aware of that. And gonna do that for us. And we
Yeah, the only reason I want to look back is to prevent us from doing all
Absolutely,
this
I
stuff in the
completely agree.
future. And like Steve's point earlier, we just need to put some things in place between us and the board. We're not a board that's gonna be conflicting with you guys. We want to work with you guys. We want to make things work, so the old board's gone, the new board's here.
On both sides.
On both sides. So,
Mr.
got a lot of
Council,
smart people, so,
you done, Ms. Smith?
yeah, let's put our heads together and figure this out.
There are two ways that the county can provide money to the schools. As a loan or by category. We've always done it by loan. If you did it by category, one of the 10 categories is facilities. So if we budgeted by category, we could track, say, why are we not putting it in that category? Right now, we're not doing that. And if we could do it jointly, fine, but we just got to do it, so we don't have this problem.
I would push back on that. I would say there's a need for categories, because we're having a conversation right now about these categories in our budget. We're asking for some.
Discipline to put the money in the category.
It's good.
I think we're showing that we're addressing the issues that we have.
I'm not casting
And then
any
there were-
aspersions on the group here, please.
And then I get it, but right now we're bringing a plan to you, saying this is what we need, this is what we need going forward as well. We need you to fund that. We're asking you to fund that, and then we want the discipline to make sure that those projects get done this year and next year, and every year that the CIP's, whatever it's required.
I'm gonna rep all the telephone calls that I get to do. When we borrow that kind of money. We want you to take all the calls.
I think I'm gonna be on vacation.
Okay.
And I don't carry everything.
I would like to add, just to clarify, that we would not be borrowing the whole amount in 1 year. We would never do that. I just want to clarify that, like, we're gonna look at 25, and if there's stuff there that we need to borrow because we don't have the cash currently, we're gonna borrow for those projects. And then we will move forward and layer debt on, or if we have had enough savings or the new revenue streams to cover that down the road, then those ones we're saying right now, we're gonna bond, are not gonna be bonded. So you would never bond you might bundle some projects together that would make sense based on timeline, which is what the financial advisors helped me do, because I'm an accountant, not finance person, it kind of gets commingled together. But, we would never issue that whole, like, if I don't even think all those are debt, I have to have my book up, but if we say it's 68 million, we would never do that for projects that are out 7 or 8 years.
Right.
Because we would have an arbitrage problem there, which is interest and IRS penalty and all that kind of
Is there a
stuff.
minimum size that you go forward in order to keep the folks interested in buying the bonds and keeping the interest rates down?
Well, in the past, over the years, I wasn't here when those were done. We've done some that have been around 2.5 million. But since I've been here, the smallest has been 9 million, but I don't think that would be a good question for Kyle Lux from Davenport. But I think we have more earmarked than 2.5 million, so.
Okay, thank you.
You can cut me off.
Thank you.
Mr. Bentley, thank you. That brings us to our second public comment period. Open the public comment.
Well, it's getting late in the day.
Go ahead, so your 3 minutes, let's represent the group. And
I'm Jim Osmondar, 27-year resident of Powhatan County at 4481 Cosby Road, which is in District 5. I know I only have 3 minutes, but would you have any objection if I ran over a little bit?
We would all have to, they have to be smart at a certain time, so give me 4 minutes. How about that?
Let me first start by congratulating Brett Chardine on his first year anniversary as a county administrator. I hope we have many, many more. Thanks, Back in the fall for the elections, I had an opportunity to speak both personally and via email with Ms. Morissette, just to get a sense of her thinking, her beliefs, and so on and so forth. She told me a few things that are appropriate for this meeting and for this whole budget session that we're going through. Here's what she's told me. To the extent possible, Powhatan County and the Board of Supervisors should be run like a business. It is imperative that the board seek good businesses. And that was music to my ears because I have 45 years of corporate experience, primarily in strategic business planning and analysis. So that was music to my ears. So with that in mind, and given that Brett 2 weeks ago shared the county's vision, mission, strategic goals and objectives, success indicators, performance measures, and so on and so forth, I have some hypothetical questions and some food for thought. I know this budget cycle has just begun. There's still a long ways to go before we finalize anything. So I thought I would ask these hypothetical questions and provide some food for thought right now. Some of these questions apply to both the school board as well as to the board of supervisors. First one. If we spend 10% more than currently proposed, where would we spend it? That is, what are our priorities? What better results could we deliver? For example, faster execution or lower cost of services. As I said, these are just hypothetical questions. We don't have answers for them today. Can we accelerate the achievement of some strategic goals? For example, attracting new businesses to better balance the commercial to residential ratio of the tax base by a year or 2 years by spending more? And would it be worth it? You know, that's a goal that has been, being a 27-year resident of the county, I've seen that goal for years and years. And I haven't seen that metric shift much over that time. I would be very happy to pay more in my taxes for faster and better results. I'm an engineer by background. I live by results and actions. So I would be happy to pay more for faster and better results. By the same token, if we had 10% less than currently proposed to spend, since every budget has must-haves and nice-to-haves, needs and wants, what projects or initiatives would be deferred to year 2 or year 3 and still achieve the county's objectives, and by extension, also the school's objectives? What are the risks and sensitivities of deferring or even eliminating some of the proposals and initiatives? And what would we do to mitigate the risks? For example, roof replacement. If we were to defer that by 1 or 2 years in some cases, what's the risk? How would we mitigate that risk? What are the trade-offs we have to make between various proposals and initiatives? Again, going back to priorities. What are those trade-offs we have to make? I heard a lot about the county's capital proposal as well as the school board's proposal, capital proposal. We spend millions every year on capital. Most of the capital spending for both the county and the schools are in support of infrastructure projects. So typical private sector metrics like ROI, net present value, internal rate of returns, they don't apply here. But at the same time, can we put in place some performance metrics on capital projects? I don't know what the current process is today for the county or for the school boards for measuring the effectiveness of capital spending. How are projects selected? How do we rank them? How do we initiate them? How is design conducted? How is implementation done? Who conducts a post-completion audit of these projects? And finally, what do we learn if we do an audit? What do we learn from those projects on what worked well and what we need to improve so that we can do better in the future? A couple of weeks ago, when we had the session about the strategic goals, I had a conversation with Brett where I suggested that next to each one of the goals, which are internally focused, we also include some benchmarks, a peer group median or a peer group average, and a best in class. As an athlete, it's no good looking at your sprint time without looking at what your competitors are doing. So you have to look externally also. So to the extent we have these goals and measures, can we also include some peer group averages or median and some best in class? So I've got a signal. Thank you very much.
I got a signal first. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I will close public comment period this time. School superintendent comments.
Just want to thank you all for not only this opportunity to come together today, but a commitment to continue working jointly on projects. And I know that Mr. Chardon and I agree to continually work collaboratively. We try to meet monthly. He has me over here as a part of his leadership team meetings. And so it is an amazing partnership. And I just can't say that enough. And I appreciate the extended partnership with the boards.
County administrator.
Once again, absolutely echo everything Superintendent just said. I thank very the staff and the school board for the collaborative nature and partnership. And then just one thing, won't really impact this budget, but we are working on some solutions to the middle school traffic backup. So when that was redone and redesigned, what we used to have is it's 2 areas to queue up. That was eliminated. Schools have done a good job to try and find any efficiencies they can in the logistics, but ultimately it's just too many cars, not enough asphalt. So we're working right now with engineers, schools, public safety, everybody on some plans. So presumably if we move something forward like that, we'll either go after a grant together or use some of our CPA money to fund it. So it won't be a budgetary impact, but again, just while we're both together, we're still working on that. Hopefully have some estimates back very soon from the engineer. That's it.
Any school board comments? Sir?
the funding that the schools get is a little bit more complicated than what the Board of Supervisors. So, and I know it was hard to understand for me initially, understanding the crazy SOQ system. I know you're aware of the composite index. Anything you can do as a Board of Supervisor to contact our state representatives and to ask them to reevaluate the SOQ would be greatly appreciated. Currently, the schools, correct me if I'm wrong on my number, but we have 222 more positions than what the SOQ, is that correct,
I
222?
think that's right. And I think it's important to know that like bus drivers aren't, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not required, so those are never SOQ positions.
And it's very antiquated, and the state of Virginia is one of the worst in the nation. And that's not your fault or our fault, but as citizens of Virginia, if we really care about our schools and the proper funding that should come from the state, we all need to join together and contact our elected officials and ask them to please, there was a JLARC study, you can Google it and pull it up, that the standards of quality, SOQs, are very unfair. And it impacts what you guys have to give us to meet the standards that we need to educate our children well. Thanks.
Just a comment to say, as you continue to examine our budget, here's what I hope that each of you will see. One, that we are committed to improved compensation and benefits for staff, to properly and continually maintain our facilities, to identify the needs of our students at all levels and work to improve their educational outcome, and that we also continue our efforts in using a clear plan to show the disbursement of our monies. I appreciate the atmosphere of the meeting here today and the verbiage that you bring to the meeting about seeing the needs and wanting to meet those needs. And so I'll close with this little statement that may you be proud of the work you do, the person you are, and the difference that you will make. Thank you.
Amen.
Very well spoken.
I would like to say that I really do appreciate this joint meeting. I think it's just amazing. I did campaign with a lot of you guys, got to know you all very well, and you know, some of the most important things to me is transparency in all of our fronts as far as our school board is concerned, especially financially, because we have that responsibility to our board and our county, and also, you know, all of our constituents. And I'm just, if Debbie keeps getting any more compliments from me, I just think she's so amazing. I love the fact that she's got, you know, she's really helping us have these buckets and have these money in these buckets, and you know that we're not going to move things around. And to tag on with Ms. Hart said earlier, and I had actually spoken to Dr. Taylor about this earlier. My goal is the next, you know, few months is to really do all that we can boots on the ground here for our school systems. Once we get through some of our little hiccups that we have, is to really work with our upper officials, you know, our delegates, our state Senate and Congress, because this is why I wanted to get involved here locally. Everything that we can do here, we can't expect them up here to help us down here if we don't push up. So, you know, maybe if you know, I appreciate the comment, we can all kind of feel that way, so we can put pressure up top so that we can have better results and live a lot nicer down here in this level. One of the other concerns that when Dr. Tigan, you know, we do have some red areas. I've had a couple conversations with some of you all, and our responsibility of having amazing school systems and affects our county, right? So we do have some yellow and red risky areas with accreditation, and that is our number one purpose, is to get that clear and straight and fixed, because unfortunately, if we lose accreditation, that's not going to look good on the county. When people start to look to come to move to Powhatan County, if we are not accredited, that's not going to look really pretty. So if you can help give us the funding that we need so that we can work hard and get that done, that would be greatly appreciated.
Board comments. Mr. Bennett.
Heard a few times mention the old boards, us versus them. Let me set you at ease. I think there's a culture change here. I'm excited about that. There's the vision that you have, we share that. The mission that you guys have, we share that. We're all moving in alignment in the same direction. I think we should all be excited about that. The summary, the forecast that we looked at today, that helps us prepare for the future, as was mentioned. Being disciplined, that's on us, and we're willing to accept that. We're excited about accepting that because we can't move forward if we're stuck looking behind us. So we're definitely in alignment to do that together. So.
I had, over the last year, the honor of serving on a strategic planning effort the schools did. And came away from that with a much deeper appreciation for the dedication and the commitment on the part of the staff. I've sat in most of the workshops over the last 4 or 5 weeks of school board workshops. I think I have an appreciation for what you are proposing based on the proposal presented. And I, for one, my single vote, I support the budget you're submitting 100%, including the salary comp recommendations. And I would include the additional $500,000 of staffing, not all of it, support all of it, but the vast majority of it. I do support. I don't want to see Mr. Benway drop over a corner as he's
Benway doesn't either.
as he's working this 60 hours a week. He only works half day, 7 in the morning to 7 at night. So it's only half days, but that and the behavioral specialists, I think, are vitally important to education. So commend the school board for your diligence and really appreciate the financial side of the school's system. I've watched that work very, very well. Commend Dr. Tiger too. I believe you are a steward of our money. I trust you.
Anyone else? Good. I have one thing to say.
Sure.
Not yet. Get ready to. Get ready to. But I would like for everyone, as soon as I drop this gavel, adjourn, to grab one of those cupcakes. And let's wish Mr. Jamie Timberlake happy birthday.
He's a legend.